so much, with memories that meant even more. A reverse mortgage loan isn't some kind of trick to take your home. It's a loan, and it's tax-free cash just when you need it. It's about making your retirement better.
Call today and find out more in AAG's free no-obligation reverse mortgage loan guide. Access tax-free cash and stay in the home you love.
Of course, you can use it to pay some bills, cover medical costs, update or repair your home, but best of all, it eliminates those monthly mortgage payments so you get more cash in your pocket.
Hey, what's Totzach, Joe? You're on the mute. You're muted.
I'm on the mute. I didn't.
Now you're off the mute.
Bill Swift uses Flex Paste, the incredible rubberized paste. Right out of the tub, it clings to the surface.
Somebody put me there.
Instantly fills gaps and holes.
Shut me up.
To a strong, flexible rubber, perfect for sealing RVs and campers. Use it to help prevent flood damage.
Oh, I know why.
TV is.
Well,
Get Flex Paste and the Flex Seal family of products at these fine.
Oh, that's why. That explains that. That explains that. Dun, 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 dun. Ding, da, 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 dee, da, dun, 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 dun. Dun, da, dee, da, da, dun.
Good morning. Hey, buddy. How Dougie do? Dougie do. Dougie, Dougie, Dougie. Oh. Morning, good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing?
Hello, Big Bob G.
anybody home?
I'm home.
Yeah, that makes two of us.
We got 3 Bobs now.
Three out of 6.
So when are the new window guys coming?
Well, they're ordered. I don't know actually. The factories today aren't as reliable as they've been in the past.
Hmm.
I hope soon. Though the ones for the hall and the classroom, I believe are coming in before the other ones for the library and the the smaller replacement ones. The big ones are next. In the entry, in the courtyard.
Where's the
Those are-
rabbi? I see him on there.
I'm doing the
Rabbi.
share screen and I'm going to begin. Okay.
There you go.
There he is.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Omer Rabbi
Morning.
Shimon ben Pazi,
Morning.
Shabbat, Trap,
Good morning.
State Shabbat, page 118a. Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi said in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, in the name of Bar Kappara, Kol Makayim Shalosh Sudot b'Shabbat Nitzol Mishalosh Peronios. Whoever is careful to eat 3 meals on Shabbat is saved from 3 disasters. So let me explain. Normally, in Talmudic times, 2 meals a day was considered sufficient. They were tougher then and less pampered. So you eat in the morning and you eat in the evening. But on Shabbat, you eat a 3rd meal. You eat at night, Friday night. Then you eat Shabbat morning after services. They used to daven earlier in those days. And then there was a 3rd meal in the afternoon after Mincha. And that is, of course, Suda Shlishit, or it became in Ashkenazified Yiddish, Shalashidus. Okay, so, and even if you're not going to shul, by the way, you should still eat the 3 meals. So whoever honors the Shabbat, because since Shabbat is a day when we are completely united with God, the very pleasure of the body is in itself, if it's permitted, is in itself an act of service to Hashem. Everything on Shabbat is holy, including physical pleasure. And therefore we eat a 3rd meal, that our body participate in the joy and pleasure of Shabbat. An extra meal, more than we normally eat. So anyone who eats 3 meals on Shabbat is saved from 3 types of troubles. In other words, you honor Shabbat with 3 nice meals. Michevlo Mashal Mashiach, from the pangs of the Messiah, which means to say there are disasters and troubles that will precede the ultimate redemption, and you will be saved from those troubles if you eat the 3 meals. Umedina Shel Gehenom, and from the judgment of Gehenom after a person dies. They have to suffer for all the evil deeds they have done and all the good deeds they didn't do. And this is called Gehenom. And when one keeps the 3 meals of Shabbat, the punishment of Gehenom is alleviated. U'milchemet Gog u'Magog, and from the war of Gog u'Magog, which precedes the troubles of Mashiach. But there'll be a great cataclysmic apocalyptic war, and you will be saved from being extirpated in this war if you eat the 3 meals of Shabbat. So for a piece of challah and a piece of herring, you can save yourself from troubles in this world before Mashiach comes, from the troubles right before Mashiach comes, and from the troubles of what after 120 years when you go to the next world. How do we know this? Siv hacha yom. With regards to Shabbat, it says yom. It says with regards to the mon, hayom, today you shall eat it. And it's written there with regards to the troubles of Mashiach in the book of Malachi. Hini anochi sholeach lachem es Eliyahu hanavi. I will send to you Eliyahu hanavi lifnei bo yom Hashem Aggadot v'anora, before the great and awesome day of God, which are the disasters that will precede the coming of the Mashiach. So if you keep the day of Shabbat and honor it with good food, so imagine you can ensure yourself against all kinds of tzaras by having a nice plate of cholent. Well, Judaism is great, isn't it? Medina shel Gehinom. From the punishment of Gehinom, it's written here, Yom, with regards to the punishment of Gehinom, in the book of Tzefania, one of the 12. Their day will be a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, destruction and desolation, darkness and blackness, cloud and thick fog, which we understand to be referring not to this world, but to the suffering in the next. And it's written here, Yom Evra, and it's written by Shabbat today. And Yom Evra Yom, and the war of Gog and Magog, it's called the day. It shall be that on the day that Gog arrives in the land of Israel, Ezekiel 38. And therefore, since it says with regards to Shabbat, Yom, this day you shall eat. So by eating on this day, we avoid the troubles of the other places that it says day. Now, let us delve into this a little bit deeper. Well, what is the Gemara really saying here?
Exactly. What does the Gemara really telling us here?
Right, because this is obviously speaking.
Because this is over the top.
Good. It's supposed to be over the top. However, it works like this. It says that if the Jewish people would only keep 2 Shabbatot, Mashiach would come right away. What's the idea? Because Shabbat, if you'll notice, if you're not already thinking about the Cholent, at the end of davening on Shabbat, after Ein Kelokenu, we go through the song of each day. And the last song of the day is Mizmor Sher L'Yom HaShabbat, and the Siddur quotes the Talmud, Yom Shekulo Shabbat. It's referring to a day that is all Shabbat, all rest, the Messianic era, the end of days. In other words, and we say on Shabbat, Me'ein Olam Haba, it's a taste of the world to come. That means the world of Mashiach. In other words, Shabbat, the idea of the Messianic era, is a time of complete peace and tranquility and pleasure, and most of all, a time in which God is revealed to us. Every Shabbat, we have a taste of Mashiach because we are closer to God and we are free from all the troubles, because there's nothing you can do on Shabbat to deal with the stuff you have to deal with every day. So it's a taste of Mashiach. So someone who honors Shabbat properly merits the good stuff of Mashiach and avoids the bad stuff. In other words, the idea is that the travails of Mashiach are what you have to go to get redemption. But if you honor Shabbat, you're already in a redeemed state. You get to skip the bad stuff. And that is the basic idea.
Rabbi, I have a big problem here.
What else is
You know what that tells me? If you take it at face value, you don't read a little into it
Can't hear
a
you.
little differently, I got a big problem. So since I know how millions of Jews lived, especially in the eastern part of Europe, and there were many Jews that were lucky on Shabbos to have one meal, never mind 3, not only are they getting screwed on this world, they're going to do the same to him on the second world.
Well, for that, Joe, I will respond that a good thought, God compares it to doing it. In other words, if you tried and didn't have enough, I'm sure Hashem will consider it as if you did it. Okay, so I think that solves that problem.
That solves the problem, except that what we just read doesn't read that way. And Puraniyut, by the way, is not trouble. Puraniyut is much, much stronger than trouble.
Yeah, Puraniyut is disasters.
Disasters. Exactly, disasters.
Okay.
Rabbi, I have a question about this.
Yeah.
In our shul, the minhag is to learn between Mincha and Mariv. So can that substitute for the meal?
So the custom among certain Hasidim and Mekubalim is that you don't eat a full meal, but you have to eat something. So if you learn between Mincha and Mariv, then you should eat something before you come to shul. But even those who don't eat a meal, you have to eat something in honor of Suda Shlishit. A piece of fruit, a vegetable, something. So that's that's brought down in the minhagim. So like even those people like Chabad and I forget who else, I forget which variety of Hasidim also don't eat shalosh shudas, full meal. They don't wash, but you have to eat something. That's brought down. In other words, you can fulfill it mostly by Torah study, but you got to eat something in honor of the third meal.
Okay, it's got to be food. It can't be.
You can have a carrot or an apple.
Okay, sounds like it can't be a cup of tea. It's got to be.
It has to be some food, but it could be any food. Because actually it says in Shulchan Aruch that if a person, like in the winter, if a person is full, you can eat some token something in honor of. Now, Omer Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi, Kol ha'aneg et Shabbat. Whoever delights on Shabbat, in other words, and Joe was talking about the Jews in Eastern Europe, you should know they scrimped and saved to have something nice for Shabbat. So nosen lo nachla b'li mitzarim. We give him a boundless portion. In other words, a tremendous reward. And especially for those Jews like Joe described, who had to make tremendous efforts to have something nice to eat on Shabbat. Shneimar, as it says, Atit'aneg al Hashem, if you keep your feet from violating Shabbat in the book of Yeshayahu, from pursuing your affairs on my holy day, and you shall call, we read this before Kiddush, and you call Shabbat a delight, the Lord's holy day honored, and you honor it by not going your own way or attending to your own matters of business or speaking idle words, and you should delight in Hashem, and I will cause you to ride on the heights of the world and to feast on the inheritance of Yaakov, his father. Now, why Yaakov? Not like Avram that it says, in other words, Yaakov's reward. So Avram refers to the first temple, Yitzchak to the second, Yaakov to the third temple, to the boundless inheritance of the Jewish people. Not like Avram, he says, come and walk the land, its length and width, that's limited. And not like Yitzchak, it says, I will give you all these lands, referring to the lands around Israel. But to Yaakov, where it says, your offspring will spread, be like the dust of the earth, you shall spread to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south, of Feretz, Yama, V'Kedma, V'Tzafona, V'Negba, and all the families of the land will be blessed through you and your offspring. There are no boundaries for Jacob's portion in the world, in the Messianic era. The Jewish people will possess the whole globe, and the whole globe will turn to them for guidance. So, and space too, for that matter, right? The whole universe will be the domain of the Jewish people. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Nitzel Meshibud Goliath, someone who delights in Shabbat is rescued from the oppression of exile. What does that mean? Quite simply, that the Jew who keeps Shabbat is never in exile, because in Shabbat you create a space where no one can come and where you are in absolute power and it's only filled with holiness. Someone who properly observes Shabbat, that's a space that even if you're in exile with all the tzarot, that is a holy space that illuminates even in the darkest of times. As it's written, I will cause you to ride on the heights of the world, and it's written, you will trample on their high places. Furthermore, Rabbi Yehuda Berei Shmuel says, whoever properly grants the Shabbat, whoever properly enjoys themselves on Shabbat. Imagine this. It's, like I say, Judaism is great because the idea is you acknowledge God created your body, and the purpose of your body is to serve God. So on Shabbat, when God is revealed and the negative stuff is hidden, what happens? You recognize and you understand that everything is holy, and therefore the pleasures of the body. So how do you enjoy Shabbat? So if you think it has to be fancy, expensive stuff, no. How do you honor Shabbat? So Rabbi Shmuel bar Shila said in the name of Rav, B'tavshil shel terodin, with a dish of beets, a dogim gedolim, a big fish, v'rashei shumin, and the heads of garlic. In other words, not a big deal. Beets and garlic are easy to find. Fish used to be easy to find. Rabbi Chir Bashi says in the name of Rav, and this is in a reference to what Joe said, Afilu davar muad, even a little bit, and you did it for Shabbos, this is pleasure. For example, kasa d'harsana, a small fried fish, throw a few sardines in the pan. In other words, we talk about the Jews in Eastern Europe, they all did something for Shabbat, no matter how poor they were. And that little bit that you go the extra mile to have something nice for Shabbat brings you all the rewards we talked about. So it doesn't have to be a big fleishy gecholent, it could be a few fried sardines, if that's what you have.
Well, I'm taking from it that
You put them in the air
If there was
fryer,
more
Joe.
stress, if there was more stress and educating children to strive for a better life, to teach them trades that they can
What does
support
this have to do
themselves.
with the price of tea in China? Yossel, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
No, but then they will be able to afford the third meal.
Okay, so good. So it so happens when we get to Tractate Kedushin, Joe, at some point, there's an extensive discussion how important it is to teach your child a trade. Okay, so we'll get there. And you're right.
Rabbi, okay,
But
my
as
only,
they say, but Yossel, as they say in Yiddish, nicht zusammenführen beide mit Klotz. Okay, so let's.
sometimes I'm reading, especially Aggadot. I think our rabbis had a good sense of humor too. And
Of
they
course.
used to say things that.
But my point is that that we're talking here about the greatness of Shabbat. It says Sheshet Yamim Tavod, 6 days a week you shall work. Of course you have to work and have a trade. It goes without saying. But now we're talking about Shabbat, and in Tractate Kedushin we'll talk about the other thing. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. It's a good point, but we'll get to there. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Ilmole Shamru Yisrael Shabbat Rishon Lo Sholtu Ben Uma V'Lashon. Had the Jewish people properly observed the first Shabbat, which they did not, no nation or tongue would ever have ruled over them.
What's the first Shabbat?
So what is the first Shabbat? Very good question. So the answer is the first Shabbat is when the Jews left Egypt and the matzah ran out, God sent them on. And what did God say? That Hayom lo simtzeu basadeh, today you will not find the man in the field. Do not go out and collect man on Shabbat because there is no man. So this was the commandment of Shabbat in Parshat Beshalach. And what did the Jews do? Some of them went out to look for man, thereby breaking the very first Shabbat they had been given. As it says, Vi b'yom hashvi, and it was on the seventh day, and the people went out to collect. And what comes right afterwards? In Beshalach, Vayavo Amalek, Amalek came and attacked the Jews. Had the Jews kept the very first Shabbat, in other words, the Jews rise and fall with keeping Shabbat. When they keep Shabbat, they rise, and we fall when we fail to keep Shabbat. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mashum Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and this is what I referenced earlier. If the Jews would keep 2 Shabbatot as proper, miyad nigalim, they would immediately be redeemed, as it says. So says Hashem, l'sarisim, to the eunuchs who will keep my Shabbat, and it's written afterwards, I will bring them to my holy mountain, and so on. So what is the idea? So the idea is that, as we said before, that Shabbat recognizes redemption, but also Shabbat is the essence of Judaism. Because a person can say, I have a business, I need to work on Shabbat. God says, no, you don't work on Shabbat, even though it used to be the whole world worked 7 days a week. I'll take care of you. You know, Jews came to this country and there was a 7-day work week or a 6-day work week. The day off was Sunday. And I know of many people who their grandparents and great-grandparents, they came here, they took a job. Friday, they said, I'm not coming in, and they got fired. And every week they looked for another job. Now, a lot of these people ended up starting their own businesses and did very well. And you might be familiar with the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. That terrible fire in a Jewish-owned factory where hundreds of young women died.
And all the doors were locked.
Yeah, well, not all, just some, but we have a book on it in the show. But the point is, what is the point? That it was Shabbat, and there were about 20 or 30 young women who didn't come in because it was Shabbat. And they're the only ones who survived, pretty much. And the point is that even in America, even where it was very difficult, there are people who sacrificed tremendously in order to keep Shabbat. And why? Because Shabbat acknowledges three things: that God created the world, that God runs the world and is the source of your sustenance, and that by not doing malacha, not doing the things God asks us not to do on Shabbat, we make space for God to enter. The whole week we're busy manipulating the world. Shabbat, we stop manipulating the world. We stop moving at a fast pace. We move only as fast as we can walk. And at that moment, we make room, instead of us manipulating the world, for Hashem to tell us and for us to meditate, why did God make the world? And why are we here? And what are we here for? And therefore, Shabbat is in essence the most central expression and most important thing in all of Judaism. Okay.
Rabbi, how
But
about
if we look at the
1 minute. Someone else had a question.
I did, Robert, how about the Jews who just don't know any better?
So, there are two. This is a very good question, Bob, and there are two aspects to this. And the definition of not knowing any better means to say those who never had a chance to learn about Shabbat. So it works like this: that on one hand, God is kind. God doesn't punish anyone for what they don't know any better, what they never learned to do. But on the other hand, they don't have that advantage too. In other words, the beauty of Shabbat, the benefits of Shabbat come to those who keep Shabbat. If you don't know about Shabbat, you're missing something important. It's like a person who he doesn't know about some nutrient that's very good. A person doesn't know about the importance of exercise. A person doesn't know, a person who doesn't know that you can have a stove instead of lighting a fire. That you can use a phone instead of 2 tin cans and string, right? So it's unfortunately, and it's our job to share with Jews the beauty of Shabbat, so they should understand what its benefit. And so in other words, we don't punish a person for what they don't know better, but you can't say that, but they don't have the benefit either. And that's a tragedy. And that's a tragedy which it's our job to alleviate by telling people about how wonderful Shabbat is. Because the beauty of Shabbat is that it's like, barring danger to life, it's like a mighty fortress. All the troubles and all the narishkeit and all the silliness and all the aggravation of the week can't come in. There's you, your family, and God, and your community.
Okay, Rabbi, so there is another side to that story too. First of all, to the question they didn't know any better, I can promise you that all those Eastern Jews that came, 2 million of them that came from Eastern Europe to United States, every one of them knew all about Shabbat. They knew Shabbat.
Stop right there. Stop right there. Because I've heard that before. Oh, the Jews who came here knew about Shabbat, knew about kashrut, and threw it over. No, because the Jews who came here were the poorest on the whole before World War II. They were the poorest and most ignorant. On the whole, there were the Jews who were young and went to work at 11, 12 years old, and if you had a business or you had a job in Eastern Europe, you didn't schlep to America.
Rabbi, so...
No, I'm talking. Stop. Let me finish.
You didn't let me finish.
Shabbat and kosher in their homes. They didn't understand why they did it. They didn't understand its meaning. They went to work when they were 12 years old. They knew that.
That's very true.
Understand it.
Exactly. Those are the people that came to the United States.
So that's not called knowing. Nevertheless, there were those Jews who nevertheless sacrificed to keep Shabbat.
Those that had three meals for Shabbat in Europe stayed in Europe. Those that didn't have came to the United States.
Very good, yes, but those people also.
And look how they build themselves up. They worked on Shabbat, but those were the people, when they made some money, were donating to yeshivot, and they were the ones that did a lot of good.
There's
So
no
let's
question.
not climb on them
Joe,
saying they
Joe,
didn't
Joe,
know
Joe,
and they were poor.
Joe, there's no question that people who didn't keep Shabbat did good deeds. But let me tell you, had they kept Shabbat, they would have kept twice as much, made twice as much, and given 5 times as much charity.
If they kept
Joe.
Shabbat, if they kept Shabbat and didn't come to the United States,
No, I'm talking about the ones who
there
came.
would have been 8 million Jews died in Europe.
No, Joe, the ones who came to America and kept Shabbat are the ones who built up, who made American Jewry possible. Because let me tell you, Joe, the ones who didn't keep Shabbat, there should be right now in this country 16 million Jews. Okay? Based
Well,
on
I think this is statistics will never prove that way.
Why are there not 60 million? Because those who didn't keep Shabbat, ultimately their descendants intermarried and their descendants are not Jews. That's why. The American Jews today, the ones, and if they didn't keep Shabbat, if their grandchildren are the ones who keep Shabbat, they're the ones who will have Jewish children. That's the reality. Let me tell you something. My parents, I'm going to tell you something very personal.
Okay.
My father comes from a very big family in England. Both of his parents had lots of siblings and so on. At the present moment, and then a lot of them moved to America, and most of them assimilated. Let me tell you something. I did a lot of research into our family tree.
Okay.
Joel, listen to me carefully. Listen carefully.
I am.
Father, okay, out of, let us say, 30 cousins, my father has more Jewish descendants than all 30 cousins and the second cousins combined. Okay? So the more committed Jews were to Judaism, the more likely they are to have Jewish children and grandchildren. And that is the truth. It's not enough to, it's not enough because over time, all that Jewish stuff and Jewish pride and philanthropy, all that stuff wears away. In the end, the only thing that keeps Jews for one generation after the other, and thank God, it says in Chumash, V'dor Shlishi, the third generation shall return here. You know what? A lot of American Jews who abandoned, or not abandoned, Judaism fell away from them. Many of their descendants, including some of my closest friends, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren came back to Judaism and came back to Shabbat. And they're the ones who stopped their family line from going to extinction, as so many have. Again, based on natural numbers, there were 6 million Jews in this country in 1940. How many are there today? Still 6 million. Because there's about 1 million observant Jews, and 70% of the other descendants aren't Jewish anymore. That's the sad truth. And we have...
Rabbi, all you're telling me is something that has been going on now for 3,000 years.
And we're reversing it.
For
there are more and
3,000
more
years.
people coming, Yassel, there are more and more people coming back to Judaism, and we're reversing the process. And that's what you have to help with. Have a very good day, everyone. It's been a great pleasure learning.
The best way to reverse the process is have a country like Israel. Over there, 95% marry other Jews.
Very good. Yes, Israel is a good way, but listen to me carefully.
That's the best way.
Joe, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
You know how much I love Israel. Why don't I live there? You know why I don't live there?
I know why I don't
because
live
there's
there.
Because there's 6 million American Jews who need people to learn with them and to help them grow in their Judaism and who need rescuing, okay? That's why I'm here, and that's why I'm here in Springfield. There are Jews who need help. And you can say Israel is a great place to be a Jew. I'm in it, and it's true. But what are we going to do for the 6 million American Jews who won't move to Israel? And the answer is you and me, Joe, and Michael, and Bob, we all have to help keep those Jews connected to Judaism and teach them about Shabbat and teach them about the Torah and so on and so forth. That's our mission, because they're not going to move to Israel tomorrow. So Israel is a great solution, but it's not going to help us save these 6 million Jews. 5 million of them are on a path to disappearing if we don't help them. And that's what we need to do. And that's what this Gemara really teaches us. Because Shabbat is symbolic of the commitment, it's expressive of the commitment to Judaism. When a person keeps Shabbat, you've crossed the bridge to a very profound and deep connection to Judaism. Thank you all for coming today, and we'll see you for our 15-minute super quick lunch and learn at 12:30. And
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Yossel, thank